Coming up on Global Perspectives, I'll be talking with Camila Quinteros, one of our registrars at our International Welcome Center for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Stay tuned. Welcome to Global Perspectives. I'm Karen McDonough, the manager of International Family Outreach Programs for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. I'm very pleased and excited to have with me today Camila Quinteros, who is a registrar, one of two registrars at the International Welcome Center for Anne Arundel County Public Schools. Welcome to the show, Camila.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We're excited to share lots of things about the International Welcome Center with our audience so that they can get a better understanding of what you do and what the IWC, we'll call it IWC, is about. But I always start asking my guests a little bit about them, where they're from, and what has been your career with Anne Arundel County Public Schools. So tell us about that.
So I'm originally from Chile.
Okay.
I came to the country when I was 10. Okay. So I've spent most of my life here.
Okay.
And I started with AACPS about 5 years ago as an interpreter.
Okay.
Which was very exciting. Most of my jobs were with ITP CVS, which I loved. I loved going to families' homes.
And so ITP, Infants and Toddlers Program, and community-based services.
Yes, sorry.
So, and that it falls under special education, correct?
Okay. Yes. So I really enjoyed, getting to meet the families. We would go into their homes, do therapy sessions. It was very interesting. Yeah. And then I had the opportunity to become the interpretation translation technician.
Okay.
Here at the Board of Ed. And now I'm currently have the opportunity to move to the International Welcome Center as the second registrar.
Very cool.
Yep.
So when you came from Chile, did you come to Maryland or another part of the U.S.?
We arrived in Virginia. We were there for like a month or so, and then we moved here to Maryland.
Oh, and then
in Laurel, and we haven't moved from Laurel since.
Oh, okay. And so did you go to school in Anne Arundel County Public Schools?
No. I actually went to school in PG County.
Oh,
so I did,
yeah, because Laurel has parts that are both. Okay.
And then I graduated from Howard County.
Oh, okay. Very cool. And at the International Welcome Center, you do, obviously the main focus is registering students, but I think it's important for our audience to know that there are statutes in the United States called Title IV and Title VI that talk about the obligation for school systems to educate immigrant kids without regards to the word is national origin, right? Mm-hmm. So there is something called the Dear Colleague letter that schools are aware of about the importance of educating students regardless of their immigration status, their, the country that they come from. And based on that, Anne Arundel County Public Schools has a system in place to enroll, educate, and support our students, which for students who come to us from other countries starts at the IWC, right? So tell us, other than registering students, what other kinds of things does the IWC do? What other purposes do they serve for our families?
We provide them with resources, community resources. So if a family is coming to us and they don't have, a pediatrician for their student, for their kid, we will provide resources of low cost medical care for them. We receive donations throughout the year, so we'll provide anything that they could possibly need, hats in the winter, coats, things like that. School supplies, if we have any, we'll provide that.
Okay.
They also get to meet with the counselors. They focus mainly with, to work with high school students to look at their transcripts and all that. But if we have cases where a family, has gone through a traumatic experience and the student is an elementary school student or middle school students, the counselors will come in, provide them with resources, who they would have to look out for in school if they needed any support at school, reach out to the school counselors, let them know. So we don't just register, but we really get to know the families and see how we can support them and what resources we can provide and give them that information.
And so I think it's an important distinction because obviously the main purpose is to get the kids in school as soon as possible. So those counselors there, while their focus is mainly academic, they do have some experience with helping kids with mental health, but they don't provide ongoing services.
No,
Right.
no, yeah.
So once the family comes through the International Welcome Center, then they go on to the school, and then we support them once they're in the school.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So tell me, what other than a registrar, and you mentioned the guidance counselor, what other staff makes up the International Welcome Center?
We have the interpreter,
Mm-hmm.
and then we have support staff,
Mm-hmm.
sort of like the middle person between the interpreter, who is the person that takes the calls and, screens the calls,
Mm-hmm.
takes the information, and she's in between that person and the registrars.
Okay.
So she follows up. She makes sure that we have all the documents before the appointments, that the documents are correct,
Okay.
to kind of, support the registrars so that we can focus on what we need to do at the time of the appointment.
And so that you have everything you need at
Yes,
the time
at
of
the
the
time of
appointment.
the appointment. Yeah.
Okay. And are all the staff at the International Welcome Center bilingual?
Yes. Andrea Beckman,
Mm.
who is one of the counselors, she's not bilingual per se, but she has learned so much Spanish.
I'm sure.
That she actually meets with Spanish-speaking families, and she does the whole appointment, or her part of the appointment, in Spanish with them, without needing constant support from one of us who is bilingual.
And bilingual in Spanish?
Yes, bilingual in Spanish.
Perfect.
Yes.
And so what happens to families who don't speak English or Spanish? How do you help them?
So if we notice that the family, we're asking questions and we see that they're not understanding, we use Language Link, which is the interpreter phone system, to get, the questionnaire completed, the basic information that we need.
And that's when they first call you and they're on the phone?
Yes. Okay. So we will start asking them questions, and if we realize we're having a hard time, we usually ask them, do you need an interpreter? Do you need help with English? Some families understand and say yes. Other families have a harder time. So we just tell them, we'll call you back. And then we call back with an interpreter on the phone.
Okay.
And then we make sure we have an interpreter at the time of their appointment.
Okay. For that part of the process when they're actually in your building?
Yes.
Okay. Very good. So we've talked a lot about, how the families will call and what we do to support them there. So the phone number to the IWC is going to appear on our screen, and it's on our Anne Arundel County Public Schools website. Other organizations that we work with a lot, like Centro de Ayuda, Center of Help, they also, when families come to them, other community partners know to send families to you, right? So a family is here, they have a student or of school age that needs to enroll, and they call you. So what is the first thing that happens when they call you? What do you need from them?
So the first thing we usually ask them very basic questions. But the documents wise, we always want a birth certificate. A lot of the times families, misspell things, or they use the middle name and not the first name. And so we try to have the most accurate information. So we always ask them, could you send us a birth certificate? But we want to know when they arrive, what's the last grade completed in their home country. Who are they living with here? Do they have their own needs? Are they renting a room? Are they living with family? So that we know how we're gonna, direct this case. Are we sending it to our PPW, or is it a TRV form? So it's a lot of questions. It's very long phone calls.
So it's a lot of just demographic information.
Yes, demographic information.
So you mentioned some of the documents that are necessary. So proof of who they are, right, the birth certificate, and proof of where they live, so that at the end of the process, we know what school they're going to go with, right? And a little bit earlier, you mentioned that sometimes if a family doesn't have a pediatrician, health information-wise, what does a family need to provide the IWC in regards to the student's health?
We ask pretty basic questions. We ask them, is there a health condition that the school needs to know about?
Okay.
We explain this saying, asthma, not if they need glasses, because if they need glasses, they'll be wearing the glasses, but are there conditions that they might need medication at school? Are they under treatment? So that the parents understand, okay, if they do, this is what the school is going to require for the student to receive medication during the school day. And then
Okay.
we explain it to them. And that's where a lot of the times the whole topic of, do you have a doctor here? And if they say no, and the student does have like a condition like asthma, where we want them to have their inhaler, then we'll provide them with that information and tell them these are all the low cost medical places that you can call and see what they tell you, what documents they'll need.
Okay.
But we always ask them, what is it that you need? Is there something we can help you with?
Right.
There's a resource that you're looking for.
And I think I was also specifically thinking about shots. Like they need to give you, they don't necessarily have to have any vaccinations in the US. If they have vaccination records from their home country, that is good enough. If they have what they need.
Yes, not
Okay.
always. So sometimes because they're coming, they forget to bring their records. So during the first phone call, we ask them, do you have any records from your country? Do you have any other immigration records? Because sometimes if they were getting a visa or anything, like they'll, have to get certain vaccinations.
Okay.
If they say no, or they send us a picture and we know that they probably are going to be missing a dose, we let them know about the health department.
Okay.
The clinics at Glen Burnie and Annapolis.
Okay.
So depending on where they are, we'll get them the phone number.
Okay. And so they can then, when they're in the middle of all the beginning of the process, they can maybe get some of that accomplished before they actually come to you, or before they start school.
Yes. So our biggest, not concern, but the most important document that we need, besides the birth certificate and making sure the parents are the parents, is a TB test, tuberculosis test.
Oh, okay.
Without a TB test, the student is not allowed or cannot enter the school or start school.
Okay.
So we make it a big deal to get that as soon as they possibly can.
And do you find that so in that TB test has to be done in the U.S.?
Yes.
Okay, so even if they may have had something from their home country, we don't accept that. No. We need that to be a U.S. TB test.
Yes.
Okay. I learned something new today. I didn't realize. I thought maybe some kids might have had that, and then but now I know that it has to be a TB test done here. So we've talked about the documents that they might need to bring, and then one of the things you mentioned is any school records from their home country. So say somebody completed second grade in their home country, do they automatically go into third grade here, or how do you decide what grade a student is going to go into when they come?
So we use the same process the school used with kindergartners.
Okay.
So we use the same chart. We look at that. It's a chart that gives us the birthdays. So the cutoff dates that, when they're starting kindergarten, if they were born before September 1st of certain year, they'll start kindergarten that same year.
Okay.
If they were born after that, then they will have to wait. So we use that chart, and we have to explain a lot of the time to parents. We understand that they completed second grade, but based on the chart and what we need to follow, we need to recommend second grade.
Okay.
We explain to them, though, that they're not always being taught the same thing that we're going to be teaching them, and that if they're advanced in math or reading, they're going to get challenged. They're going to be placed in a higher reading class.
So they could be in second grade, but maybe a little bit higher or lower. If they need
depending on where they need it.
Okay. Yes. I think I know there's some of the Central American countries, their school years are different, right? So if a kid comes to us in the summer, they may not have they might be halfway through the school year.
Yes.
And so at that may be one of those other situations where even if you did a whole grade or a middle of a grade, it's all based on your age.
Except for high schoolers.
Okay.
They are the exception.
Okay.
So they are, they're the ones that's why the counselors meet with them, because they're going to look at the transcripts. Okay. They're going to look at what classes they took. We're going to look at the English assessment that we do. Then we're going to look at the math assessment that they took.
And so I want to talk about that again a little bit later. But high schoolers are the only ones that take a language and a math assessment, and an English language. And
middle schoolers as well.
Okay.
If we have a middle schooler that completed 5th grade and it's going into 6th, sometimes we don't.
Okay.
Because depending on where they're coming from.
Okay.
And we show it to them all the time. We tell them it's pre-algebra. A lot of them have never seen equations, so we tell them just write your name on it. It's fine.
Okay.
And then they'll be placed on like grade level math.
Okay.
Yeah. For middle school.
So the that'll be an important thing to keep in mind, that you may come here thinking your kid's going to go into third grade, but age-wise, they may be in another grade.
Yes, and we encounter that constantly, and then we always explain it to parents. It's okay. Some parents get frustrated, but so we explain it. We tell them, if they're advanced in reading, if they're advanced, they'll be challenged academically, but we do want them to be with their peers.
Okay. All right. Well, we're going to take a small break. Thank you for joining us. We'll be back in a moment. Welcome back to Global Perspectives. I'm here with Camila Quinteros, one of the registrars at the International Welcome Center. Camila, before the break, you were telling me a little bit about the assessments and how high schoolers and middle schoolers have to take a math and an English assessment. So what does that English assessment look like for our kiddos who either are still learning English or have no English?
So we do the same entry test for all of our students, where we ask a question. That question determines which path of the test we're going to give them. So there's two paths. Path A, which is for the students who can speak and write.
Okay.
So that's what we're looking at the end with the entry task.
Okay.
Can they speak and can they write something?
Okay.
If they can do it, then they're a path A. So they'll do reading, listening, speaking, writing.
Okay.
If they can't, then we'll do the path B.
Okay.
And we will only give them listening and reading.
Oh, okay.
Yes. So we want to see because sometimes even if they don't speak it, they really understand it. So then they'll be, higher in the listening. Or sometimes they're good at reading it, but not when they're being, with...
And something that I always found that I had to, learn to understand is when you say listening, as somebody who does these screenings, you mean understanding.
Yes.
Yes. So obviously it's not that a kid can hear.
Yeah, if they can understand what they're...
Yes. Right. And I think that's interesting that because it's how much can you understand and how much can you speak. And like you said, a lot of our kiddos that come from other countries, maybe they watch TV, they watch movies, so they can understand what they're hearing, but their ability to express themselves is not at the same level of what they understand.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. Very good. And the kids who have gone to school in another country and they've learned English they've taken English as a subject in their home country in their school. Just because they've taken English, they don't skip that test, right? Everybody gets that test.
So there's a home language survey on the online registration that we do. And it's part of our question. When the first call is part of our questionnaire, we have those questions in there. Because we want to know if the student learned how to speak English first, if they only communicate in English and they only speak English at home, we will not assess them.
Right.
Because that's the only language they know.
Right. And I think sometimes when, especially if people are watching the news and we're thinking about immigrant students and we're thinking that they're all speaking Spanish, that's not the case. We have students from all over the world.
Yes.
And, say a student from New Zealand or Australia or England, they might already come to you speaking English and reading it and writing it. So you can skip that part of the test.
Yeah, because they would answer those questions with English.
Okay.
If there's another language for two of those questions, then we will screen the student.
Okay.
Yes.
And that will determine again their ESOL level.
Yes.
Correct.
Yeah.
And then tell me a little bit about what are some of the different ESOL levels that not everybody that goes to school after being at the IWC is a beginner, right?
No, most of our students are.
Okay.
But we've had cases where we screen a student and they screen out of the program.
Okay.
They've screened so high that they don't need it.
Okay.
They did speak another language, but they've used English so much, they write it perfectly, they don't need that support.
Okay.
We have kids who score at a 4, which is the last level. And we have kids screening at a 3 or a 2. But most of our kids are screening at a 1.
At a 1. And that's the beginning level. And that determines the amount of support to learn English that they get once they get to their school. So now a family has provided you all the information that you need, and they make the appointment. I think we skipped a little bit ahead. So like the kid comes, you've got the documentation. The kid goes and does their testing first, or what happens when they're physically in your office?
So when they're physically in our office, they'll meet with one of the registrars first.
And together, the parent and the kid.
Parents and the kids, they
Okay.
always have to come, unless there are certain circumstances where it's like an aunt or an uncle, but
Right.
those are specific.
So an adult guardian, somebody who's in
Yes.
charge of the kid.
We'll meet with them. We'll go over the documents, because we always ask for the families to bring those documents.
Even though they might have sent them electronically.
Yes, we just want to have them, because sometimes, we're printing them out, and the copies are not the best, and we really want the schools to see the immunizations correctly, like the dates. So we always ask them to bring everything.
Okay.
So we'll go over the documents. We'll ask them a few more questions about arrival dates, last grade placement, just to make sure that the information they provided at the beginning is still the same.
Okay.
Then we provide them with an email with school information, hours. If they're a Spanish-speaking family, they'll get the bilingual facilitator information. They'll get links to meal applications, resources on how to use the Chromebooks. Most of the families get kind of the same email.
Right.
We'll print that email. We'll explain it at our office. If they have their phone, we'll have them open the email, click on the link, so that we can show them how the page looks.
Okay. Perfect.
We'll go over, do you need resources, traumatic experiences, things like that. And then we'll start the process of screening. So while the student's screening, we might be talking to the parents about, if they said, the student had a traumatic experience, can you tell me a little bit more once the student is not there, because we don't want them to stress.
Right.
We'll go over any other information while the kid is being screened by someone in our office.
Okay. And all that information that you're providing to the parent, and they walk out of your office with all that information that they then need to take to the school, and the kid has done their test or their assessment. So at the point where they leave your office, what is the next step for them to actually, the kid be in a class, or the student to be in a class?
So the next step is for us to email the schools. We have like an email, and they know about the IWC News student email.
Right.
It's our way of telling them, hey, here's their information. We tell them, are they, a PPW case, whatever the case might be. And it's just a way of saying, we've done our part. We looked through all the documents, everything, it's okay. Now they're ready for you to do your part, which is find a teacher, create the schedule if it's a middle school or high schooler.
Okay.
And then they'll contact the families, letting them know when the student is going to start.
Okay. And I think that's when you had mentioned the bilingual facilitators, which is my team. Then if there is a language need, if it's the bilingual facilitator who needs to be part of that conversation, and I know that we have an Urdu, a Chinese, and a Korean-speaking bilingual facilitator. If not, then the school makes an arrangement for an interpreter or language link to be part of that conversation.
Yeah, and
for the kid to begin school.
Yes, and we put that on our email. Parent needs
what
language interpreter. If you don't have an interpreter in person, use language link, because the parent is going to need.
And that has to be super helpful to the schools, that they don't have to guess what language, and they know exactly how to get the help that they need to get the student in the school. All of that process from, when I know the phone process, by the time you get the documents and the applications are filled out and stuff. So when a family comes to your office, I'm guessing it depends on the number of students that they might bring, how long they might be in your office.
Yes, so it's really, what really determines how long is the testing part, the assessment part.
So how proficient they are.
Yes.
Okay.
So if we have a high schooler who completed 10th or 11th grade, or were in the process of completing it, their math test is going to take most likely 45 minutes just for the math test.
Oh, okay.
Then we have to do the English. That's like an hour and a half if they are, Path A student.
Because as you go with the test, then you get to a certain point, you can't do any more than the test stops. Is that correct?
No. So if they're a Path A, we'll give them the whole test.
Oh, okay.
And then we'll, go over the answers and give them a score for the answers. But we have to have them complete the entire test.
Oh, okay.
The only test that has like a limit of like, if you had this number wrong, it's the kindergarten test, because they're so tiny that
Right.
if they couldn't answer 3 correct for this section, then we're
Then
done
the
with the
test.
section.
Okay.
Yes, but
Very
everybody else has to complete the entire test.
Mhm. And so when that parent leaves your office, and you've determined that they're in ESOL level, when you send that email to the school, you already tell the school what ESOL level the kid is. So you've done that part before you email the school.
Yes.
Evaluated what
Yes.
ESOL level, so they know what class to schedule them in.
And because we tell the parents as
Oh,
well.
you tell them right
because
then.
we have them sign a form saying that they are okay with their student participating. Parents have the right to refuse services if they don't want their student in ESOL.
Okay.
So we do talk to parents, especially the parents whose student qualify for like level 4. They're like, we tell them, we understand they're at the last part, but if they did qualified, we should provide them with the support, because there's something they still need help with.
Correct.
But we do know all this information. They also know it before they leave, because we need them to sign those documents.
Correct. And so then there's no guessing. Everybody's on the same page.
Yes.
Everybody has the same information. So you've sent the email. The next step is the school contacts them, and they then from that point the student belongs to, is the responsibility of the receiving school, right? So I think also it's important for our audience to know that depending on if you have a middle, elementary, a middle, and a high schooler, that family is going to essentially have 3 separate schools to reach out to them. Hopefully it's the same bilingual facilitator, but it may not. So it's not as simple as walking out of your office and going to school the next day. No. There may be some delays in terms of arranging that meeting with a school counselor and all of that. So I also wanted to ask you, we talked about, some of the resources that your office provides. Is there one area of need that you think, or that you have seen, that the majority of our immigrant families need? Are they more in need of resources for like physical supports of housing and food and clothing? Is it more mental health? What is the greatest need that you're seeing in your office?
It's very difficult to, because we see a lot of the families are opening up about mental health needs, which we really appreciate. It's very important, right, because they've gone through a lot, most of our families. But what they really ask for out of their own need, it's the food, clothing. Yes, those are the things that if they have to ask, they'll ask for it. The other needs are more of like, what is it that you guys need? Was there something you want to say? So it's more of like, we are asking these questions, right? But they're very like vocal when they need it.
When they need something.
Where can they find that support?
And I would imagine it's just very difficult when you've been through so much, and then this is a very foreign, very complex process, that it's difficult to ask for help. Now that the students are in the school, and your process of the IWC is complete, do the families sometimes still reach out to you? Do they sometimes still call you and ask for other support?
Yes, sometimes, yes. Yeah. We do let them know, we're moving on with other cases. It will be easier and better if you contact the school, the bilingual facilitator. You'll get an answer faster than if you're calling us, because we're constantly, our phones
never stop ringing.
No. Yeah. So to get to your call, to get that information, it might take us a little longer than if you're reaching out directly to the school.
And I think too, the IWC is located in Annapolis, and so you're serving families all the way from Brooklyn Park down to Tracy's Landing, right? Yes. So that the school itself, whether it's the bilingual facilitator or the guidance counselor, can maybe give them resources that are more local to them, or whether it's an organization or any, a church or a community group that can offer some support.
Yeah, it would be easier because they're in the community. Yes.
Exactly. Well, thank you so much, Camila. It's hard to believe we're out of time.
Oh, wow.
I really appreciate you sharing everything that you do, all the wonderful work of the International Welcome Center. So thank you for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me. It was a great experience.
Good. Well, thank you for being here with us today for Global Perspectives. We appreciate your time. Have a good rest of your day. I'm your host, Karen McDonough.